Morning, everyone. It'll just be a few moments. It'll just be a few moments. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning. I'm Sunnyvale Mayor Larry Klein. Welcome to the 11th installment of my virtual office hour address. People say they appreciate these office hour live streams, so I'll continue to do them while we shelter in place and probably for even longer because the feedback I continue to get. This Facebook Live event allows me to give you some updates on what's happened in the city, in the county, in the state, as well as answer some of your questions, and then just provide some words of encouragement to all of our residents. So thank you for allowing me to represent you and work for you as much as I can at the county level, at the state level, at the federal level. I hope everyone's doing well, staying healthy. Please remember to take care of yourself. This is physically and mentally difficult for so many people. Go outside your house in this beautiful weather, although we should have rain this weekend. Go in your backyard, take a walk around the block, uh, take a break if you can. Sheltering in place has helped flatten the curve, so please keep it up. I know how difficult it is with the good weather and wanting to socially interact, but we're not to that point yet, although I'm hoping that things continue to open up over the next few weeks. Keep following the county health orders. Remember that you can do your part to help spread the virus. Wash your hands, don't touch your face. maintain safe social distance when you're out. Of course, whenever you can, wear your mask, and only go out for for essential trips. Uh, if you need a face covering, please contact me. I have multiple people in the community that are sewing them, and I can easily distribute them to you. It's free, and most importantly, it's important that everybody has one. But we're not out of the woods yet. There's still, it's you could still be a carrier, or somebody that you meet could be a carrier and be asymptomatic, not have any symptoms. So please be careful when you're seeing and interacting with other people out in public. It's been another busy week. We're now 73 days after the March 16th health order was started. And since the declaration, a lot has happened. A lot happens every day. And I go on conference calls, press conferences. I watch, multiple feeds. I confer, I advocate for the city. But it's really important. And one of the things I try to do from this meeting is distill all those meetings and all the conference calls and press conferences down to what I'll say are the pertinent facts for our residents. So before I get started with that weekly update, though, I want to talk a little bit about racism and hate. We've all heard about the tragedy that happened in Minneapolis earlier this week. And this is sadly not the first time we've seen this. Hate and racism have no place in our community. Today is actually the 1-year anniversary of the Unity event. So 1 year ago today, and a lot of people, I'm surprised about how many people didn't hear about it, but 1 year ago today, the community came together in response to a hate crime right here in Sunnyvale. So in April of last year, basically a driver ran into a group of pedestrians at the corner of Sunnyvale and El Camino and injured multiple residents, multiple people there as a hate crime. And he, from the reports, was off his medication and had other mental issues. That being said, it was a hate crime right here in Sunnyvale. And so the community came together to basically forge a path forward. And, it was driven by the Martin Luther King quote, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. So the whole Unity event was all based around the concept of love and light. And I was overjoyed when 300 people showed up more than 300 people showed up at the community center on an evening where everyone was very busy, but came together to talk about how we move forward. It was a celebration of the diversity of which Sunnyvale is made up of. And to me, that was one of my best times as mayor, just to see the community, and build a stronger relationship at the end of the day. And, that was a year ago. And this week, I actually heard about xenophobic incidents happening near one of our Sunnyvale parks. And so, this isn't our community. Our community, we don't tolerate hate against any faith, any belief, any people, any background. And so, I was really disappointed and, have been reaching out to that community once I heard about that incident. 2 weeks ago, as president of the Cities Association of Santa Clara County, we brought forth a resolution denouncing xenophobia in all of our cities. And we'll be bringing a similar resolution to City Council at our next meeting. I know these are difficult times. It's very stressful. There's a lot of fatigue about people sheltering in place. But there's no excuse for hate or discrimination in Sunnyvale. Thanks for listening, and I hope that that message resonates with our residents. You know, from our restaurant reviews, from my restaurant reviews, you see what a different, what a how what a variety of restaurants we have, what a variety of cultures we have in our city, and to see any hate towards any of them isn't what Sunnyvale's made of. So thank you for listening. Now let's get on to kind of the normal update. Let's talk about what happened at the federal, state, and county and local level. Last Friday, a new health order went in place, so that did two major things. The first thing, it allows retailers to do curbside pickup services. So you can now go to Big Five and Lee's Books and pick up whatever you need. So there's retail at the door. And the important thing for those businesses is they had to have direct access to a sidewalk, a street, an outdoor walkway, parking lot. Stores cannot move the goods outside for display because then conceivably multiple people are touching them. But they also need to limit the number of workers inside. The order also allows manufacturing of goods to start going on, but all businesses must post signage. So the county was a little bit better about standardizing some of the signage. So now there are what the measures are that a specific location is doing. So that's made available as opposed to handwritten signs that some of the restaurants that I visited have done. And then they basically have a little check mark that you're COVID-19 prepared as far as showing that you're following all the county health orders. It's not required, the county health, the check sign, but it does show that you've actually read the order, and it's a little bit easier for restaurants and for people coming into different retail or grocery stores to know that here are what the prescribed conditions are, what the customers need to do if they're purchasing something. And then, of course, the other thing that the order did was it added additional outdoor activities. So it added outdoor museums, historical sites, car parades, which is really good for those graduates that are celebrating their graduations right now. Not an easy thing not to have a normal graduation, but conceivably car parades, and then for friends or relatives driving by to celebrate. And then, of course, it allowed public gardens. So you'll see, Charles Street Gardens. I was happy to see, Charles Street Gardens, Sunnyvale's first community gardens, begin to open back up. So I saw some work at the garden earlier this week. But please remember to stay at home as much as possible. Wear your face coverings, practice safe social distancing. All those are really important. And then one of the things that the new order did do was around face masks. It made it very clear that they're required for people, except when they are exercising, if they're under the age of 7, or if a doctor has advised that they not wear a mask because of asthma or something else. And the previous order was going to expire May 31st. The new order is slightly different, that it'll continue in effect until it is rescinded, superseded, or amended by the health officer. So it's a little bit more, doesn't have a final end date as things currently stand. And I think we'll continue to see continued changes. Every 2 or 3 weeks, we'll see another step towards openness. So, we're at the beginning of stage 2 right now. I think, in hearing what Dr. Cody has to say, they'll continue to monitor, what kind of response we're getting, what kind of issues we have in our community. Is the COVID-19 cases going up? That all those will be monitored very closely from a dashboard standpoint, and ultimately then we'll get to see, as things open up, what new measures or what new activities can be provided within the county and within the cities. And then, of course, if there are negative consequences, meaning that we do see an uptick in cases, then conceivably the response is maybe a slight step backward, that we reduce a certain portion of that. So we'll get to see what happens there. On Monday, let's talk about what happened at the state level. Governor Newsom announced some state guidelines regarding churches and places of worship. So this is, still not fully in place from a county standpoint, but it laid out what requirements are there if a place of worship wants to open to parishioners. And so right now, a lot of places have moved to online services, and I think that's fantastic. I've heard from a lot of them that they will continue to do it even after the shelter in place orders allow people to congregate. That a certain percentage of their residents prefer, and ultimately even after it opens up, will feel safer not having to go to church. So some of the rules that were part of the state health order was congregants are strongly recommended to wear face masks. They should be screened. They should be screened for temperature and other symptoms. As far as staff, they must be screened for temperature before their shifts, since they'll most likely be dealing with other people. Sharing of items like prayer books, cushions, prayer rugs is discouraged. High traffic areas like pews and lobbies need to be frequently disinfected. And, instruments, microphones, things that are commonly used at the pulpit or podiums should be disinfected between every use. And then, of course, consider shortening the services as much as possible to prevent, the chance of COVID-19 spread amongst that congregation. And then finally, use disposable seat covers and dispose of them between different services. So, as far as that's concerned, we'll see when some of the congregations in our city will open up. It's not really a county effort yet, and definitely we've heard multiple people and talked to multiple county people about that need. Ultimately, it's reducing the number of people that can actually be in a congregation to conceivably 25% of the seating that was originally allowed. So 25% of the people in that, and then within the building and spaced out accordingly, socially distanced accordingly, will be an important step there. Let's see. On Monday, I want to say our advocacy finally paid off. A few weeks ago, the 15 mayors of all the cities in Santa Clara County, as part of an effort from the Cities Association of Santa Clara County, wrote a letter to partner with the county for testing and tracing and having a better idea of what the guidelines are, what the path forward is. And so part of that ended up bringing testing, free COVID-19 testing, into North County. So on Monday, I got tested at the Rengstorff Pool in Mountain View, and and it's a mobile location. Right now, they're trying to get that location every day, every once or twice a week, and then we'll start spreading to other cities. I've been talking to the county supervisors on that. On Monday, we tested 491 people, and on Wednesday they tested 450. So, I wanted to make sure that I went through that test, and it wasn't as comfortable as I would have hoped. It was the long Q-tip, but it's important that we start showing progress towards how many tests we can get done a day around the county, because only that will help us make sure that if people are infected or start showing symptoms, they can immediately get tested. And especially as you talk about the number of people at restaurants, the restaurant staff getting tested on a regular basis becomes very, very important. And I hear, El Camino Hospital is also working on providing free testing very soon. And as soon as that's available, I'll be passing that information out. So thanks to all the other mayors, all the people that have been advocating with the county, having something in North County, and I'll be happy when it's also here in Sunnyvale, but having more testing available to everyone is really critical as we move forward. So from a county standpoint, on Tuesday, the Board of Supervisors extended the eviction moratorium until August 31st with a slight caveat. California Governor Newsom needs to suspend the state law around evictions through May 31st, but he yet has to extend that order. So it's the county is kind of presupposing that before May 31st, the state will extend their order, but I think that will go through without a problem. The other thing is the board is also looking into extending the payback period, which is currently 120 days. So, when early March, after the COVID, after the shelter in place started, the county put into place an eviction moratorium for residential and businesses that was going to end first at May 31st and now August 31st. That would give basically people 120 days after that to pay back any rent that they haven't paid during that time period. And what Sunnyvale did after that was say, instead of 120 days after May 31st, we said 180 days, so 6 months for residential evictions after the termination of the shelter in place. So we made it a little more flexible. We don't have to keep going back and readjusting it like the county does. When we finally end the shelter in place, then that starts the clock as far as payback for the residential, for the people in apartments or renting, in mobile home community. We also protected very clearly the mobile home community in the middle of the pandemic. And then on Tuesday night, council met and we did two things. One, we extended the state of emergency for another 60 days. And so we need to do this on an interim basis, before most likely every 45 days. We'll keep extending that until we actually see the termination of that state of emergency. And the other thing that council did was we went through interviews. We interviewed candidates for our boards and commissions. So, we always have a certain number of applications and a certain number of positions open on our boards and commissions. And our boards and commissions provide recommendations to council. They make certain decisions on their own. And there's a wide variety of things available. If you're ever interested, definitely feel free to reach out or go to the Sunnyvale website and search for boards and commissions. We take applications year-round, and then when there's positions open, we contact people, or you apply for specific boards that you're interested in. If you're interested in parks and recreation or arts, housing, planning, whatever it is, there's conceivably a place that you can give feedback and assistance to the city staff and city council on decisions that we need to make or part of the operation of the city. And then on Wednesday, I was happy to be part of a press conference held on historic Murphy Avenue. This was the kickoff for the Sunnyvale Cares program. The application period went live Wednesday afternoon at 1 p.m. And so just as a reminder, Sunnyvale Cares is a small business assistance program that will help businesses have access to more than $1.3 million to assist with the impacts of COVID-19. Now, this small business assistance program, it's run through the Enterprise Foundation, and it can provide grants up to $15,000 to many of the small Sunnyvale businesses. And that application period started on Wednesday and will close this Tuesday, June 2nd at 1 p.m. So if you're a business owner, small business owner, go to sunnyvale.ca.gov/svcares to find out more information. But grants, so we'll take applications during that lottery, during that period, and then it'll be a lottery system based upon the number of qualified applicants, figuring out, who's approved and what order, money will be distributed. So you can go to the Sunnyvale website to find out more. And I especially want to thank the city council, and I thank my other council members for also approving $600,000 of the city's money to put into this fund. But we've also had a lot of matching donations from Google, from LinkedIn, from J. Paul Development, Intuitive Surgical, and then on Wednesday, Facebook also put in $50,000. So that created a fund of more than $1.3 million. And if you want to donate, the donations are tax deductible. Every dollar that you donate goes directly to small businesses in our community. So if I wholeheartedly say support our local businesses as much as you can. Do takeout at different restaurants, buy books at Lee's, buy sporting goods at Sports Basement or any of the other stores. But it's important that we can do whatever we can to make sure that small businesses can make it through these difficult times. And then as far as the grant award amounts, so it kind of depends upon the number of employees. It's for 1 to 5 employees, it's up to $5,000, 6 to 30, $10,000, and 31 to 50, or up to 100 for restaurants, it's $15,000. And then as far as determining the eligibility, the business needs to have an active Sunnyvale business license. It needs to operate a physical commercial store or restaurant in the city. And then as far as it needs to be in good financial standing with the city of Sunnyvale. And I've had a lot of requests on, well, why can't my business be part of that? We're not allowing national chains to be part of that. And we're not allowing local chains with 3 or more locations or home-based businesses. It's mainly, I understand there's a lot of small businesses that are working from home that have been hard hit, but the overhead for small business is a lot less. And we're going to go through this money very, very quickly, and we're trying to help as many businesses as possible. So, definitely as you're talking to your businesses, as you're doing takeout, make sure that they know the city sent out postcards telling, different businesses about the upcoming application period. But if you know a business owner, just tell them about it, just to make sure that in case they've not gotten the card or forgot about the start of that application date. And then the new county dashboard on testing and hospital cases. The new cases continue to drop. Yesterday, the county reported that there were 17 new cases, which brings the total number of cases for the county to 2,701, of which 1,768 were from San Jose, and 160 cases were right here from Sunnyvale. Based upon the last 7 days, there's been and so we've increased testing. So for the last 7 days, there were 1,707 test cases a day, with an average positivity rate of only about 1.3%. Last night, the county reported there were no new deaths, and the total number of deaths countywide is now 140, with 6 additional deaths over the last week. So, the number of cases continues to drop, and the number of people dying from COVID-19 in our community also continues to drop. So all those are good signs, and that's one of the reasons why we would continue to open up and move farther into stage 2 and stage 3. From a national standpoint, on Tuesday, we surpassed 100,000 deaths, and it's just amazing. I never thought that would, that we would get to that point. It's terrible to see any loss of life, especially on something, something like this, which sheltering in place, preventing the spread, is one of the best ways to make sure that this virus isn't affecting others, and making sure that hospital response isn't being overwhelmed. So hospital availability in the county continues to look good, and so the ICU counts are also up on the county dashboard. So the county's been very open as far as giving information, as far as being very detailed on what the number of cases are per zip code. So you can go onto the county website and see on a per zip code base, on a per city base, where the hot spots are. And were some hot spots in East San Jose and a hot spot in Mountain View that they're currently looking at. And as far as advocating, I've been doing on lots of calls advocating over the past week. I talked to the county supervisors on 2 or 3 times a week in different phone calls, and it's been actually very, very good to hear their response and them taking action and getting back with me on questions that come from our residents on how we can move forward, what we can do. And I just heard from Senator Feinstein. One of the things that I've been advocating is getting more funding for our city. The previous act, from a federal standpoint, provided money to cities over $500,000, which helped very few cities in our county and in the state and in the country. And so Senator Feinstein said that she's committed to the Coronavirus Community Relief Act to provide $250 billion in financial assistance to cities with populations under $500,000, which was a big thing. Getting that through Congress, and hopefully next through the Senate, will mean a lot to all of our cities. Last week we talked about the budget issues, and freezing a certain number of positions, reducing services as far as the amount of tree trimming, the amount of sidewalk repair we do over the next year. Some of that will immediately could be funded by funds from that we pulled to deal with COVID-19. So all this is currently in flux. If we get more in as our budget, we took a very conservative view from a city standpoint to make sure we have a lot of flexibility going forward over the next 6 months, year. That being said, if we get additional revenue, we can do some course correction and try to figure out what services, what additional positions we need. This is an ever-changing world we're living in, and trying to figure out what the right response is from a city standpoint is not always an easy sort of thing. So the county's been very responsive, and I've really appreciated that. Let's see, the testing we talked about, and we're looking for hopefully a permanent location in one of the North County cities, and maybe it'll be Sunnyvale, maybe it'll be Mountain View. We'll see about that. And then, of course, other hospitals stepping up to the plate to provide additional help as far as that's concerned. And then question that I got before I go to other questions, I did not follow the news regarding this shelter in place after May 31st. Can we have a quick update? So originally the shelter in place order was to end May 31st. What the order that went in place last week was basically extending that until it is rescinded, meaning it will continue until the county health officer says it is now over. So that's one of the important things that we need to do as far as when we decide to terminate the shelter in place order, that the state of emergency is now done. It's as we go through stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. And we've talked about the stages. They're on the county website, so you can get more information there, and I can post about that later this week. New questions that I got. How can I help? So one of the things that the county is looking for, and one of the things that we did from a 15 mayors asking for, was asking for direction and partnership on testing and tracing. So they've stepped up to the plate and added testing into the North County, and there's now 6 locations as well as a few others within the county, and a lot of the hospitals are also doing it. But they're also looking for help on tracing, and I just want to first, so the county's looking to get to 1,000 people on that workforce helping out with tracing, and some of them are county employees. Some of them will be city employees from different cities, and one of the things, as initially they were asking for 40 hours a week for 6 to 12 months. The county has reassessed that after a lot of discussions, and now they're saying that it's ultimately about 24 hours to 40 hours a week for 3 months, preferably longer. There's a quick education and kind of training that goes through that, but they've kind of shortened what those estimates are. So we're looking at that from a city staff standpoint. Are there certain people and staff that can basically spend half their week helping out with tracing, which is really important, if their normal duties couldn't be done or because of services haven't fully opened up within the city. And I also want to thank the Sunnyvale residents that have already signed up. I know we've reached out to our CERT volunteers, and a lot of them have stepped up to the plate to help out as far as tracing is concerned. So I want to thank them very much. I love our CERT team. They make a big difference. And when the next emergency happens, and we're in an emergency right now, they're always willing to help out however they can. And then, as far as what the tasks are, is in going forward, you can go, if you want more information, you can always go to sccgov.org. I can help, ICANHELP, but they're looking for a mixture of abilities. Mainly, it's customer service skills, interpersonal skills over the phone, strong written and communication skills, computer proficiency with the ability to enter the information that you're doing. So when you're doing contact tracing, you're contacting residents that have been affected by COVID-19 and then finding out who they've been in contact with over the week or two prior to them being diagnosed with COVID. And then the ability to work remotely, and multiple languages capabilities is always a plus. So, go to sccgov.org/icanhelp for more information. Another question I've heard from multiple people is, I'm single and feeling very secluded and depressed during shelter in place. And I think that, applies to everyone, but it really applies to those people that are sheltering in place by themselves. It's not easy at all. And I totally understand that, because you're not having that human contact. It's difficult sheltering in place. The lack of that face-to-face social interaction is so, you don't realize how important it was until it's gone. And, a Zoom meetings help, are all that's very good, but the lack of physical proximity to other individuals is really, really difficult. So, please take time to talk to other people and wave to people when you're out. If you're picking up food from a restaurant, that social interaction, thanking them in, it's just a short, conversation. You're both wearing masks. You're there, thanking them for being open from a restaurant standpoint. I know a lot of people are doing delivery, but if you do takeout, and I know it's going out in the community, you ultimately save that restaurant or give a lot more of that money directly to that restaurant. And that's one of the reasons why everything I do is takeout, but it's thanking the employees, thanking the owner that's there, conversing with them, or yelling over the fence at your neighbor and talking to them. Whenever you're out, saying hello, all that makes a difference. It's not easy right now, and especially if you don't have someone else in your household to talk to be around physically, it can be even more detrimental to your psyche. So I hope that I there's not a quick solution. That lack of social interaction is really difficult, but try to have one-on-ones. The group meetings are wonderful, but one-on-one discussions, FaceTime, just hearing somebody's voice is useful. But when you're out, make an extra effort to talk to people if you can. And then I keep getting the question, are the tennis courts open? I got it after last week's, yet again after last week's address. Yes, the Sunnyvale Tennis Center opened 2 weeks ago, and staff has been dealing with scheduling those tennis players on those courts. And then public courts opened last Friday with appropriate signage. And keep in mind that tennis players are supposed to be singles only, as well as from the same household. And I've heard mixed reports this past week about people, at courts that are not families, they're not socially distancing. So please follow those posted signs. It's really, really important, and if you see somebody, definitely you can report it to, DPS non-emergency. They will make a call out and do some visits, but city staff is monitoring that as much as possible. One of the questions is, when will the CRV buyback program be open at the Smart Station? Well, the Smart Station opened on May 11th, so a few weeks ago, and they're following certain COVID safety protocols. All employees and members of the public that are visiting need to wear your face mask. As far as the CRV buyback center, it's currently closed, but it will reopen on June 1st by appointment only. So you can go online, and I've already heard of people that have put in their appointment as far as delivering their cans and their bottles. And so to schedule the appointment, you can either, the easiest thing to do is call the Smart Station 408-752-8530. And that's for CRV buyback. All the other activities, you do not need to set up an appointment. So you can do your compost pickup, your recycling drop-off, your public materials disposal, and of course the food scrap bin. And I've heard from several residents, that live in multifamily residential, either apartments or condos, that want to deal with their food scraps. They don't like it to just be thrown into the dump. Throwing it into the garbage means that it ultimately ends up in the landfill, which isn't good for greenhouse gases. That food ends up decomposing and creating methane. So I'm really, overjoyed to hear about the number of residents that still continue to want to be part of that program. And so, especially from a multifamily standpoint. So you can drop off food that's been put in clear plastic bags at the Smart Station as well. One of the questions I got was, I just lost my job, what can I do? So the local unemployment rate was 12% in April, and that was up from 3.5% in March. And so that's for Santa Clara, the San Jose, Sunnyvale, Santa Clara metropolitan area. And that's much better than the state unemployment, which was 16.1% in April and 5.8% in March. So we're doing, better. The Bay Area is doing better, but there's still a lot of people that are out of work, that are still being laid off. I'm, as mayor, I get the WARN notices, WARN notices, and those are the notices for people that are doing layoffs. So, every company that lays off a certain percentage of their workforce, they have to report it, to the city of what they're doing from a process standpoint, and showing that what they're doing for their employees as far as education and what facilities are available. And one of the local facilities that are available if you're out of work is Nova. And, I had a call yesterday. Um, so it was a town hall with Senator Hill, California Insurance Commissioner Lara, and myself, and uh, one of the one of the directors from San Mateo County were on a town hall. What was Jerry Hill's town hall to talk about the small business response. And one of the things that I talked up about was Nova and the good that they're doing. And Nova did such a great job. It was North County. That's the 7 cities in North County of Santa Clara County. They did such a great job that they also run basically the workforce management in San Mateo County. And so if you want more information about Nova, and they will help you do EDD applications, they'll help small businesses do grant funding, through for PPP funds and such. Their website is NovaWorks, NovaWorks.org, or you can give them a call at 408-730-7232. And so that's been a fantastic operation for many years. It has a lot of representatives on its board from all types of businesses. So from auto dealerships to high tech companies, that are trying to make sure that each portion of our economy is actually represented there, and making sure that if there's a need, how we move forward. So one of the things that I'm doing, I did the town hall with Senator Hill yesterday. I'm also on a mayor's recovery circle. So it's basically looking at how all of our cities are going to respond. So there's a business. So through Silicon Valley Leadership Group, there's a business recovery circle and a mayor's recovery circle for the mayors from San Mateo County, Santa Clara County, some from Alameda County, and kind of getting together to figure out what our right response is going to be and what we can do together regionally to make sure our businesses succeed even more. As far as, let's see, other questions I got. Could you offer insight regarding getting tested for those of us that don't exhibit symptoms? So I did it mainly to go through the process. I am out in the public quite a bit. It's mainly for people that are essential workers. So if you are, at a restaurant and conceivably thought you might be exposed, or you just want to feel more comfortable, even if you're asymptomatic, it's important that you get tested frequently. So once every few weeks, just to make sure that you don't have COVID, and then conceivably, like from a restaurant or from a business standpoint, you're getting tested. And part of it is to show, if you're working at a nursing home, if you're working, depending upon what type of essential worker you are, you need to get tested a lot more. And so that's one of the things they don't have in the test right now is not an antibody test. And so it's just figuring out at a certain point in time, did you have COVID-19? And so conceivably, some people, if they're constantly being exposed to public, need to go back and get retested at every few weeks. But it's important that from a process standpoint, the county gets the process in place to get up to being able to have 4,000 tests a day. So that's part of their work as far as that's concerned. Is there COVID testing in Sunnyvale? Not yet. Hopefully very soon. And then, so yeah, please keep reminding me and some of the others about great restaurants in Sunnyvale. This has been one of the best things that I've enjoyed as mayor as well. It's been difficult at times to make sure that I'm hitting a different restaurant every day, but it really is great, hearing the owners and their feedback, and they're so thankful for people that are still supporting them right now. So if you can try to do, one meal a week. For me, I'm doing one meal a day and highlighting that restaurant, and or whatever that takeout is from that place of business. To me, that's really important, and they appreciate it. They appreciate the business that they're getting, because it's very, very difficult for them right now. Uh, so from a shelter in place standpoint, you know, what as far as the 180 days, I'll be very clear that when we terminate that 180 days, that starts the clock. And so there's a question about, does it start from June 30th or July, or so whenever we terminate the shelter in place, whether or not that's July 30th or August 15th or August 31st, uh, that will start the clock as far as having to pay back any, any rent, and there can't be penalties, there can't be fees that you weren't able to pay while sheltering in place. A lot of people don't have jobs, and I know there's discussions at the at the state level and the county level about, can there be, basically, can we force the landlords not to charge at all? That, that's a taking, and I've had a lot of discussions with our city attorney on that. But hopefully, landlords are being reasonable during that time, and whenever we terminate the shelter in place, that starts that clock of 6 months to allow people to hopefully have jobs and be paying back their rent, whatever wasn't paid during the shelter in place. What is the plan to open Sunnyvale Fremont Pool? Right now, pools are not allowed by the state, by the county. That it's there's too much issues with what, you being in the water and um, conceivably leaving, whatever virus you have. That's not allowed right now. So definitely that's being looked at. But I've heard that will be, much later, in probably stage 3, before we get to that point. Let's see. Any other questions? Who is the public elected person responsible for shelter in place and its effects? So this is the interesting difference. So it's like, the county health officer is hired by the county, so the board of supervisors and the executive director for the county hire her. That being said, it's like it's this odd situation, because the supervisors are not health experts. The Dr. Cody is the county health expert, and so she defines this, and it's a kind of a push system, as far as, them being able to ask for certain things from her, but her billet, her job is to maintain the health of our residents as much as possible. And taking very early action to shelter in place was critical to show, you look at how the case rates have happened within our county in comparison to other counties in California. And it was very forward thinking. That being said, a lot of pressure is being applied right now to her, and I don't, from my standpoint, I'm happy I'm not in her shoes, because it is a really difficult job, because you're trying to follow the information as far as, death, and every death is critical. You're trying to make sure that the COVID doesn't keep spreading, and it's figuring out how quickly to open up. I wish it was a little bit faster, but then again, it's also how many people are following the rules. I see far too many people that aren't wearing face masks, and so it's trying to make sure that we slow the spread of the coronavirus as much as possible. And so as far as who's accountable, if you want to talk to your county supervisors, they're your best ones, because ultimately, she is a county employee. Definitely a lot of people are writing to each of the county supervisors, asking them to open up, and I apply as much pressure as I can, saying this doesn't make sense and that doesn't make sense. Things get changed, and I was happy to see some things finally open up, and it's a give and take from a situational standpoint, but we're trying to do as much as possible. We're trying to maintain the safety of all the residents in the county, and I understand it can be very, very difficult. Let's see what's happening at what additional services is the city doing to during these times of shelter in place. So this has been very difficult, and we're looking at opening the summer camps for children. And so if you have children that you want to do summer camps, we're looking at opening those up. It'll be very restricted as far as the class size, the number of children that are interacting there, but that is one of the things that we're doing. We're also doing tons of things online. So that's one of the things that from an environmental standpoint, we're having an edible gardening and succulent landscaping webinar. So you can take a look at the city website. There's, I think, 2 webinars coming up. One is on June 1st, Monday at 7 p.m. and learn how to reduce your garden water usage. And then the other one is Secrets to a Successful Succulent Gardening, and that's on Saturday, June 6th at 1 p.m. So those are online webinars that, trying to have some of the classes that we normally have during shelter in place. The library has also added certain things. So, one of the things they added is Creative Bug. So library card holders can now access Creative Bug. It's an online art and crafts classes that are taught by designers and artists, and you can watch the classes anytime. If you don't have a library card, you can go to Access Sunnyvale and request a card. So if you go to sunnyvale.ca.gov and you don't have a current library card, you can go there now, and city staff will get back with you on your information, but that will give you access to online activities. So that's the important thing is, we've moved so much online, and we're currently looking at finally delivering. So sometime over the next 2 weeks, you'll hear more about a pilot program for people that want to pick up hardbound books. And there are those people, especially children, who don't want to be on iPads or looking at TVs. They want books, especially young children. And so we're currently looking at a pilot program to do delivery in the plaza. So pick up in the plaza for the library, and then and having people do reservations online. So we're working on that right now. But Creative Bug, is one of the new services that we're providing that gives you painting, drawing, knitting, crocheting, paper making, sewing, all kinds of things. And last weekend was Hands on the Arts, and it was the 35th annual Hands on the Arts. It was a little, I was sorry to see that we couldn't have all the children there, and for the 35th annual we were planning some big events, but it moved online, and so you can actually go online and see a YouTube video for one of the projects that I did. But a lot of city staff did different projects, Hands in the Arts for kids, that they can do whenever they get a chance. So it was from lots of different nice little projects to focus them and allow their creativity to expand. One of the other new services is automotive repair. So that's an online resource that's also there. That's part of the services that you can go on the library site now. So it's the motor auto repair source online. So this, if you want to work on your car, definitely that's one of the things that you can do. Although that being said, I took my car in um, for service at Toyota Sunnyvale, and I was able to go online and take my car in for service 15 minutes later. The number of people that are actually taking their cars in for service right now is very, very low. And so if you need service, now is a perfect time to do it. Uh, with that, let's go ahead and, it's after 10, it's time to wrap up. I want to thank you again for joining me this week. Monday is the start of June. And as we did last year, we will be raising the LGBTQ flag at City Hall. And so we were hoping to have a big ceremony this year. We finally approved it last year from a council standpoint, and I was hoping, I'd already put some things into action to actually have a big ceremony. With the shelter in place, we're prevented to do that. So hopefully next year, but you will be seeing that flag flying at City Hall over June for Pride Month. But so maybe next year we'll hope we keep our fingers crossed. So I continue to be proud of Sunnyvale's response to this pandemic. Help your neighbors. Make and share face masks. This is yet another homemade face mask. Help continue to build our community during these difficult times. I'm proud of our Sunnyvale residents pulling together to help their neighbors, to help strangers. If you're out on a walk, wave, say hello to everyone from a safe social distance, of course. People miss that daily interaction. And, Sunnyvale will emerge from this as a stronger community. We're in this together, and we'll get through this together. Thanks for listening, and until next week, have a safe week. Take care. Goodbye.